Kia ora koutou. For 3 years I've been introducing the idea of a non-anthropocentric architecture to successive groups of students in the first year Masters of Architecture Design Studio through suggested readings. This partial strategy has never achieved the kind of engagement intended. In 2019 I decided to approach the issue directly. Spurred on by reading Donna Haraway's Tentacular Thinking and various reports and articles like this one by Damien Carrington, I framed a design research project for these students called Te Aitanga Pepeke, me ngā pūngāwerewere, the world of insects and spiders. The project was deliberately titled with animals at the centre of the frame. The title was shared with Māori to include their worldview, alongside that of a Western scientific rationalist view that identifies the destruction of insect life as a powerful vector of human extinction. The full paper discusses only the first portion, 3 weeks of that project. It identifies issues that complicated the intentions of the project before discussing insights and modes of preparation that could potentially have enriched student engagement and produced more informed works of architecture. This presentation records the stuttering attempts to generate the beginnings of an empathetic understanding of insect life through the remaking of a significant image of exchange. The architectural design issues and resources are identified before an examination of design tasks from the first critical stage of the project. There are 2 obvious ways in which the insect focus could be addressed in this design research project. First is kaitiakitanga. We must consider them alongside ourselves as a critical part of the primary client group. They are the lives that we must treasure. They are the lives over which we must exercise kaitiakitanga, or guardianship. And secondly, the form and performance. Insects provide examples of ways of being and doing things that might be useful to us, that may subsequently inform the making of the project. The acts of drawing that we encouraged as a method of research exploration were intended to form a kind of bridge between research for design and the active engagement in design exploration. The project was co-taught by 3 architects, staff members of the Unitec School of Architecture. In addition to the direct staffing resources from the architecture program, we had input from 2 staff members from other Unitec departments. Ki Moro Taiapa, our assigned kaihotu or learning guide, was able to provide the students with a whakapapa, a genealogy of the various insects, and you can see that on the left of the image. His presentation was made within the Unitec Wharanui, Ngāko Mahaki, so embedding it in the cultural context of Te Ao Māori. The Department of Environmental and Animal Sciences lecturer, Adam Parkinson, gave a presentation covering in detail 3 native species. For each insect, he described their biostatus, recognisable features, life stages, hunting strategies and predators. This identification of categories was a template for the assembling of knowledge about the other species of interest to individual students. The students were provided with scanned copies of 2 collections of powerful line drawings. The classic Auckland Museum Handbook, Native Animals of New Zealand by A.W. Powell, contains line drawings and descriptions of a large number of insects, moths, butterflies and spiders. Bulletin 8 of the New Zealand Entomological Society, Drawings of New Zealand Insects, showcases the work of Desmond Hillmore, an illustrator and painter who produced exquisite line drawings for this publication. And you can see one of Desmond's drawings of the huhu beetle on the right-hand side of the image there. Drawing from this plethora of material from Te Ao Māori, science and art practice, the students were initially asked to select 1 insect and redraw that insect using the architectural conventions of plan and section. This conventional drawing method was deliberately chosen to underline the structural, spatial and surface issues and to bring to the student attention the physical organisation of the insect. The act of exchange was chosen as a deliberate strategy to engage the students with a human-insect relationship. The students were asked to envisage and draw an exchange between human and insect based on the existing image of colonial exchange between an unidentified Māori and Joseph Banks. This image, drawn by Tupaia, the priest navigator who had joined Cook's first voyage in 1769, shows Banks offering the Māori a piece of cloth or possibly tapa in exchange for a crayfish. This drawing task was the first time that the students had to confront the issues of some sort of communication between the species and a conscious co-location of those two species. The pedagogical intention was to move the students through a two-stage process. The first step was thinking about and drawing about this process of exchange. A series of fertile questions were offered as a means of exploring how this exchange might take place. So you can see in this slide the idea of the fertile questions that were meant to tease out the possibilities of how to make this image. We suggested that the image might initially be drawn, the insect might initially be drawn at the same scale as the human, and you can see that in question number 4 there. But this scale relationship was something that the students struggled with. They found it difficult to imagine, therefore to draw, insects that were the same size as a human. What seemed like a useful suggestion to simplify the task became immediately complicated by scale, even before objects of exchange could be considered. The drawings were presented, discussed in terms of these fertile questions, in an attempt to establish a basis for the next stage. However, these possibilities did not translate into design outcomes. The next stage stuttered. Our task originally asked for the students to make a drawing of a co-working space, that is, human and insects working together. But after considerable staff discussion, we withdrew that task and instead asked for a space which they, human plus selected insect, co-inhabited. Only a small number of the cohort attempted to make this drawing. We asked again, this time with an expanded and a much more prescriptive description of the task that asked for the drawing of only one space. So you can see here the much more prescriptive description of that one co-living space that we were after here. The intention was that the students used the human-sized insect as the model for this task, and that following this task, the true scale of the insect could be reinstated for the next design stage. But again, the issue of scale appears to have been a confounding factor. As I mentioned earlier, this was envisaged as a two-stage process. First, a magnifying glass workshop operation, and then, following this big view, the students would return to the true scale of the insect to make design. The underlying strategy was to anthropomorphize the insect to try and generate empathy. It may, however, have been a counterproductive strategy for a number of reasons. First, the upscaled, magnified insect may have generated confusion and disconnection rather than empathy. Insects, after all, are never the same size as us. Secondly, the reasons for these scale change processes may not have been clearly communicated. In hindsight, the task was too much of a leap and needed the staged assembly of a number of items, and these processes should have taken much more time and have been much more carefully planned. In retrospect, we missed an opportunity to more richly utilise this Tupaia drawing. It was only recently, while watching an episode of Anne Salmon's TV series Artifacts on Māori television, that I realised the depth of cultural processes embedded in the Tupaia drawing. As described in the program, the offer and presentation of gifts in Te Ao Māori involves not only the transfer of artefact, but also the gift is accompanied by the hau, or essence of that person, and the gift carries with it obligations. The process is spiritual as well as transactional, and it's reciprocal. The giver and the receiver are joined together at a number of levels through this process that involves the mutual recognition of the status of the other. If we'd been able to more expansively, more richly engage with the cultural nuances of this process and discuss with the students the embedded values, then the outcome of the task might have been different and reflected a deeper understanding. The critical point here is that I, as a Pākehā New Zealander, did not have enough insight to understand the richness of the Māori cultural process, and I was consequently unable to take advantage of its potential as a model to effect a change in attitude, a change in perception, a change that may have informed a more engaged design outcome.